Jamila stood in the middle of the room, soaked in her own urine. The stench filled the air, forcing Mr. Salman and his entire family to constantly cover their noses with their hands. Her eyes were swollen and dry. She had cried for too long. Her sleek white gown was stained with long red lines stretching from her back to her neck, marks left by repeated beatings. Mr. Salman, standing beside her, raised his right hand, holding a long horsewhip, and struck her again. Jamila no longer showed any emotion. The pain had become too much too frequent. Her body had stopped reacting. "This will teach you a lesson," Mr. Salman shouted as he flogged her again. "You're becoming weak and useless by the day. And it's all because we've been tolerating your nonsense in this house for too long." "Do you even know how much that vase costs?" Mrs. Haya added with disgust. "It's worth more than your miserable life. Fool!" Jamila was on the verge of passing out when Ali rushed into the room and ran straight to her side. "Dad, what are you doing?" he cried. "How can you beat her this badly?" "She's my maid, and I'll correct her however I please," Mr. Salman snapped, his voice full of anger. "Thank God you said maid, Dad, not slave. She's not your slave," Ali fired back, his voice rising with fury. The living room had turned into a battlefield, father and son throwing words like spears. Mr. Salman hated how Ali always stepped in whenever he tried to discipline Jamila. "She is my property, and I will treat her however I want. Now get out of my face and let me teach this dirty thing a lesson," Mr. Salman barked, lifting his hand again to hit her. But this time, Ali stepped forward and used his own body to shield Jamila. "Not on my watch, Dad, not while she's carrying my baby," he shouted, staring straight at his father. The room fell silent, cold, still. His words hit like a rock tossed into calm water, loud, sharp, impossible to ignore. "What did you just say?" Mr. Salman asked, stepping forward and leaning in with his right ear like he didn't believe what he heard. "I didn't quite get that." He turned to his wife. "What did he just say to me?" Ali's voice shook as he answered, trying to stay firm. Yes, Dad. Jamila is pregnant. For me." Jamila, sitting on the floor behind Ali, trembled. Her heart pounded harder at the sound of those words. She pulled her knees closer to her chest, trying to disappear. "I'm sure he's joking. It's surely just a... What's that thing they call?" Mrs. Haya stuttered, her face pale. "A prank!" Latifa, Ali's older sister, jumped in. "Yes, it must be a prank. You know how these children are these days, always joking." "Ha ha ha." Mrs. Haya gave a dry, nervous laugh. But Ali said nothing. He moved back to Jamila, bent down, and gently picked her up in his arms. Without another word, he carried her out of the house right past his stunned father heading to the small room behind the yard. He laid her down gently on the bed there, then hurried back inside to get the first aid box. A few minutes later, Ali came running out again, but this time he was being chased by his mother. Mrs. Haya. "Ali, are you out of your mind? Your father will kill you. Go back and tell him it was just a joke." "I don't care, Mum," he shouted, still moving toward the room where Jamila lay. "I love Jamila, and I love our baby. The last time Dad almost beat her to death, I was the one who took her to the hospital. Today, Dr. Irish called me with her results. She's pregnant, Mum. It's real." His mother rushed in front of him and grabbed his hands. "Son, look at me," she said, her eyes wet with tears. "I'm your mother, your Mamie. Please tell your father it was all a joke. I know him. I've lived with that man for years. You have no idea what he's capable of. Don't challenge him. Please. Go back inside and apologize. Say something, anything. Just tell him it was a joke." "Mom!" Ali grabbed her arms gently. I'm not going in there. I'm done being afraid of him. Before he could finish, Mr. Salman stormed out of the house, holding a gun aimed straight at his son. His eyes were wild with rage. Latifa followed behind him, panicking. Dad, please, he's just joking. Please put the gun down. Get that filthy, dirty whore out of my house! Mr. Salman roared, stepping out of the house. He marched toward the small room in the backyard where Jamila lay, pointing the gun straight at her. Get out! He shouted at the top of his lungs. Jamila was a 21-year-old girl, quiet, well-behaved and respectful. She came from a small village and had sacrificed everything for her family. At just 17, after her mother passed away, Jamila took on the role of a mother to her younger siblings, Mila, Katrina and Ken. Her father, once a soldier, had lost both legs in the war. But more than that, he lost his will to live. He became a drunk and a heavy smoker, drowning his pain in alcohol and cigarettes. The war had left deep scars not only on his body, but on his spirit. When his wife died, reality hit him hard, and he tried to be a father again. But by then, life had already moved on without him. Jamila had to quit school to take care of the family. She cooked, cleaned, and did everything she could to keep her siblings and father from suffering. One morning, she got up early, prepared breakfast, and made sure everything was in order. But she noticed her father had not come out of his room. She called out to her sister Katrina, "Go check on Baba. Tell him it's already morning." Katrina went in, then came back a few minutes later and said, "Jamie, Baba is still fast asleep." "Oh, maybe he's just tired from yesterday," Jamila replied, glancing at Katrina, who had already picked up a bucket and rushed behind their small kitchen hut to bathe. Jamila continued with her chores. When it was time to take her siblings to school, she realized her father still hadn't come out. That wasn't like him. "What's wrong with Baba today?" she wondered aloud, wiping her hands on a cloth. She told her siblings to wait, then rushed inside to see for herself. There he was lying on the bed, shivering, his breath uneven like he was freezing. She stepped closer and slowly pulled away the thin blanket he clung to, like it was his last hope. "No, Jamila, my body is cold," her father mumbled weakly. "Baba, your body is burning hot. You have a fever. We need to take you to the hospital now," Jamila said, panicked as she touched his forehead. "Cold, Jamila. I feel cold. Cover me with the blanket. And don't talk about hospitals, we don't have the money, child." "Baba!" Jamila cried out in frustration, her voice shaking. "No," he said again in a trembling voice. "I'll be fine. It's just fever." Jamila's eyes welled up with tears, just as her sister Katrina rushed into the room. "Jamie, we'll be late for school. Hurry up, let's go," Katrina said, tugging at her hand. With a heavy heart, Jamila quickly helped her siblings get ready and walked them to school. Her mind was restless, but she knew she couldn't skip their education. It was important to her that they didn't suffer the same fate she did. As soon as she dropped her siblings off at school, Jamila rushed back home to check on her father. But the moment she stepped inside, a wave of panic hit her. He was vomiting profusely. "Baba! Baba!" she screamed, running to his side. "What's happening to you? We need to go to the hospital." Her heart pounded with fear. Without wasting a second, she dashed outside, barefoot, and ran to her uncle's house just 2 blocks away. "Uncle Modi, please help! My father!" she cried, struggling to catch her breath. "Jamila! What happened to my brother?" Uncle Modibu asked, alarmed. "He's vomiting and too weak to move. He keeps refusing to go to the hospital, she said, tears threatening to fall. Uncle Modibu didn't waste time. He grabbed his bike keys, locked his door behind him, and rushed with Jamila to her house. Within minutes, they arrived. Without a word, the two of them lifted her father from the bed. He was weak and barely responsive. Together, they cleaned him with warm water. Afterward, Jamila ran inside to fetch a clean shirt and trousers. While Uncle Modibu helped him get dressed, she packed a few of his essentials into a small black travelling bag. Just as Uncle finished dressing him, a kind neighbour arrived to assist. Together, Jamila and the neighbour gently carried her father outside and placed him on the back of Uncle Modibu's motorbike. Jamila climbed on behind him, carefully holding her father upright to prevent him from falling. Uncle Modibu drove like a man in a race against death, weaving through potholes and rough village roads as if time itself was chasing them. After nearly an hour, they reached the hospital gates. He signalled with his hand urgently, and a few security guards ran out with a wheelchair. Her father was even weaker now, barely able to hold up his head. Jamila jumped off the bike and helped them settle him in the wheelchair. As the guards pushed him inside, she ran alongside them, whispering prayers under her breath, her hands shaking and her heart heavy with fear. She had never seen her father in such a condition before. After they arrived at the hospital, the nurses quickly took him in. A short while later, one of them returned and called Jamila aside to answer some questions her father was too weak to speak. "What's your father's name?" the nurse asked, holding a clipboard and jotting things down as Jamila responded. "What is he sick with?" she continued. "I don't know, Ma'am. He was fine yesterday," Jamila replied, her voice trembling. "He just woke up this morning with a burning fever." "Is that all?" He started vomiting profusely. "Did he eat anything unusual or irritating?" "No, ma'am." "What about the vomit? Did it contain blood?" I have no idea, ma'am. I was so panicked, I didn't even look properly." "Okay, don't go anywhere. We'll need you around," the nurse said, then turned and walked away. Jamila returned to the waiting area and joined Uncle Modibu. The minutes felt like hours as they sat in silence, hearts heavy with worry. Finally, after 2 long hours, a doctor emerged through the doors. "Are you the family of—" the doctor began. "Yes, Ma'am, what's wrong with my father?" Jamila interrupted, jumping to her feet. "Yes, what's wrong with my brother, doctor?" Uncle Modibu echoed, standing beside her. The doctor gave a soft sigh. "Okay, so from the various tests we've carried out, we discovered that your father's kidneys are no longer functioning." "What?" Jamila gasped. "His kidneys are not—" "He needs a transplant as soon as possible," the doctor explained. "And before we can begin treatment, you'll need to make this payment at the front desk. Bring us the receipt once you're done." She placed a piece of paper in Jamila's hand and walked away. Jamila stood frozen, staring at the bill, her hands trembling. "Uncle Modi, what's a kidney transplant?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. He let out a long sigh. "Your father's kidneys are damaged. He needs new ones to survive." "Ah, I warned him about all that smoking. Look where it's landed him." Jamila sank to the ground, the paper still clutched in her hand, and let out a loud cry that echoed through the waiting room. That's how Jamila's dilemma started. She walked along the dusty village road, lost in thought and far gone in her mind. She was on her way back home that evening when suddenly a car came speeding toward her, nearly hitting her. "Are you blind?" an old-looking man shouted as he stepped out of a battered, tattered car that looked more like a moving coffin. It was so old and damaged that anyone would doubt their survival if they ever ventured into it. "What's wrong with you? How can you just move into the middle of the road aimlessly like that? Are you dumb?" he thundered, enraged. Jamila slowly rose, trembling and shivering, blood trickling down her leg where the car had grazed her. "I'm sorry, sir." "I didn't hear you," she said, her voice shaking. "Then you must be deaf. Look here if you're looking for someone to kill you. Go jump over a fence and die." "I'm still very young," he snapped as he dragged his old, haggard self back to his coffin of a car. For some reason, Jamila suddenly burst into loud tears. The old, weary driver paused, leaned on his car, and as if he regretted what he had just said, asked, "What's wrong, child? Why would a beautiful girl like you want to end your life?" Jamila went on, telling him everything in detail. When she was done, he looked at her with pity and said, "I will give you 800,000 shillings, but on the condition that you pay me back after 5 months. I'm not just giving you the money. I knew your father way back during my military days." Before he could finish speaking, Jamila dropped to her knees and rushed to where he was standing. "Thank you, sir. God bless you, sir," she cried, holding his leg tightly. "But remember one thing," he said sharply. "If I give you this money and you fail to pay me back on the agreed date, my dear, you will become my property." Jamila's face turned pale. I didn't get you well," she stammered. "You will become my property, my wife, if you fail to pay back my money," he repeated firmly. Jamila was stunned, but she had no choice. She nodded slowly, even though she already detested the man, his yellow teeth, his pot-belly, and the unpleasant smell that hit you first before his voice. She was lost again in thought, staring at his ugly appearance, when he snapped, "Oh, you've gone deaf again. I'm asking for your bank details. I'll send the money to your account." She explained that she didn't have a bank account yet, so he offered to drive her to the hospital and pay the bills directly. When they entered the car, for some reason, the man couldn't keep his eyes off her. It made Jamila feel deeply uncomfortable and disgusted. "How old are you?" he asked. 21, sir." "Oh, still very young. Your father never mentioned he had such a beautiful daughter," he said with a crooked smile. Jamila said nothing and looked away, choosing to ignore him completely. After a while they arrived at the hospital, and he paid the bill. Her uncle also came and handed her 100,000 shillings, which she took and kept just in case of anything. She was about to rush home to get her siblings when her uncle asked cautiously, "I hope you have nothing to do with that man, Jamila. He's known for trapping people, especially when they're in desperate situations." "Uncle Moody, he came and paid Baba's hospital bill. He only asked me to return it within a few months," she replied. "Ah, Jamila, that man will never let you go. Oh, he's known for tormenting his debtors, even when the time for payment hasn't reached yet. As long as Baba gets well, I'm sure we'll find a way to pay him back," she said, brushing off her uncle's concern. Jamila didn't take her uncle's words seriously. She went home that evening and did everything that needed to be done. Jamila's father finally sat up on the hospital bed with a weak smile as the doctor handed them the discharge papers. Jamila had barely slept in those 2 months, balancing hospital runs, her younger siblings, and small chores around the village to get by. Her uncle, Uncle Moody, had stayed close, always encouraging her even when the stress nearly broke her down. "Baba, we're going home," she whispered, holding her father's wrinkled hands as tears of relief filled her eyes. He smiled faintly. "Thank you, my daughter," he said, his voice still soft but steady. The journey back home was filled with mixed emotions. Neighbours came to greet them, offering weak smiles and short prayers. Jamila cooked his favourite meal that evening, ugali and fried greens, even though they could barely afford anything more. It was the first time the house had felt warm in a long time. But peace, like all good things, didn't last. It was a Wednesday afternoon. Jamila was sweeping the compound when she heard the familiar coughing and rattling sound of an old engine. Her heart froze. The sound got louder, then stopped, right outside their gate. She slowly peeked from behind the curtain and saw it, the old, theatre-like car that looked more like a rusted coffin than a vehicle. The man stepped out, in his usual oversized coat and cracked leather shoes. His potbelly led the way as he approached the house with a sly smile. "Jamila!" he called, his voice loud and confident. Jamila's stomach twisted into a knot. Uncle Moody was at the back with Baba and didn't hear the call. She opened the door slowly and stepped out. "Good afternoon, sir," she said quietly, trying to hide her unease. The man removed his sunglasses and looked her up and down, as if inspecting a product. 2 months already," he said, shaking his head. "Time flies, doesn't it?" Jamila swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. Baba is just getting better. Thank you again for your help." "I didn't come for thanks," he cut in sharply. "I came to check on my investment." Jamila's breath caught. "I told you. 5 months. We still have time." "True," he said, leaning against his car. "But I like to check in early. You see, when I invest in something, I follow it closely. I hope you're preparing my money, Jamila. Or maybe..." He paused, eyes narrowing. "You've accepted your fate already?" She clenched her fists, but said nothing. "I could make life easy for you, you know," he continued, his voice thick and slow. "Just move into my house. You won't need to work. You'll eat well, sleep well, and eventually love me." Jamila took a shaky step back. "I'm not going to be your wife," she whispered. He chuckled. "Not yet, but remember our agreement. I'm a patient man, but not a foolish one." At that moment, Uncle Moody stepped out, and the man straightened, his smile now fake and charming. "Ah, Moody, long time," he called out. Uncle Moody's face darkened the moment he saw him. "What do you want here?" he asked bluntly. "I came to see how the patient is doing," the man lied smoothly, "and to remind this young lady of our little arrangement." "Get out of this place," Moody snapped, walking toward him. "Easy, soldier," the man sneered. "I'll be back. 3 months left." He climbed into his car and drove off, the coughing engine echoing into the distance. Jamila stood still, her body shaking with fear and anger. "You see what I was telling you?" Moody said as he came to her side. "He won't let you breathe until he gets what he wants." "I'll find a way to pay him back," she whispered. "I have to." And from that day, Jamila began to plan her escape not just from debt, but from a future she didn't choose. Another month passed, and life only got harder for Jamila. Though Baba was recovering well, the weight of the debt on her shoulders grew heavier by the day. Every time she heard the sound of a distant engine sputtering down the road, her heart jumped, thinking it might be him, the old man with the coffin car, coming to claim her as his property. Her sleep was restless, her smiles rare. Then one cool evening, just as the sun melted behind the distant hills, she heard someone calling her name from the gate. "Jamila!" She rushed out and froze in surprise. Standing there was her childhood friend, Aching, the same Aching who used to fetch water with her from the river, who once taught her how to braid hair under the mango tree. It had been years since they last saw each other, and now here she was, dressed in a worn city sweater and jeans, her skin a little lighter, her face a little tired, but the same old Achieng. They screamed in delight and hugged tightly, laughing and nearly crying. Inside, after sharing a simple meal, they sat outside under the stars, talking like they used to. "So, how is life in Nairobi?" Jamila asked eagerly. Achieng sighed. "Tough. I work as a maid for this big family. They have a nice house in Lavington. But Jamila, I suffer there a lot." She paused, looking at her hands. "They barely pay me enough. I clean, cook, wash everything. Sometimes the madam throws insults like I'm a dog. It feels like I'm a slave worker. I haven't been home in almost a year." Jamila's eyes widened. "Why stay there then?" "Because I have siblings too, just like you, and no one else to feed them." Achieng smiled faintly, then leaned in. "But guess what? I'm planning to leave that place soon. A friend of mine back there in Nairobi told me of an agency which employ housegirls abroad." Jamila blinked. "To where?" "Dubai," Achieng said, her eyes lighting up. "There's this agency in Nairobi. A friend of mine went through them, and now she's working in a salon in Dubai. She sends money home every month. The agency helps you get everything: passport, visa, job." "Dubai?" Jamila whispered, almost in disbelief. "You mean to work that far?" "Yes. You only need some documents and transport money to Nairobi. The rest is handled." Jamila hesitated, then lowered her voice. "I'm about to be forced into marrying a man I detest just because I owe him money. I didn't even borrow it for myself. I borrowed it to save Baba's life." Achieng's face dropped. "What?" Jamila nodded slowly and told her everything from the accident to the agreement, and how the old man was already breathing down her neck. Achieng held her hand. "Then come with me," she said firmly. "Leave this place before it swallows you whole. You still have time. That man hasn't claimed anything yet. You still have this opportunity." Jamila looked down, her heart racing. "Will the agency accept me too?" "Yes," Achieng said without hesitation. "I'll talk to them. Just get to Nairobi in 2 weeks. We'll figure the rest out together." Jamila's eyes welled with tears, not of sadness, but of hope. For the first time in months, she saw a tiny spark of light and hope. 2 weeks later, Jamila packed a small bag, kissed her siblings goodbye, and left her village before the sun rose. Her heart was heavy but determined. She took the early morning bus to Nairobi, clutching the 100,000 shillings her uncle had given her. It was all she had, but it would have to be enough. She arrived at the bustling city hours later, the buildings towering over her like giants, the noise overwhelming. But when she spotted Achieng waving from the sidewalk, her nerves settled. Jamila had arrived not just in the city, but at the doorstep of a new life. A life she did not know was far much worse than the one she was running away from. 1 week after arriving in Nairobi, both Achieng and Jamila completed their passport applications with the help of the agency. Jamila returned to the village for a few days to prepare and to speak to her father. She knelt beside his bed and held his hand. "Baba, I'm going to Dubai," she said, trying to sound strong. "Dubai?" He blinked, confused. "Yes, to work so that I can pay back the money we owe and send some home too. I will be fine. Don't worry about me." Her father, still weak but recovering, gave a small nod. He didn't have the strength to argue, and even if he did, he could see the determination in his daughter's eyes. She was no longer the soft, fearful girl he once knew. She had become a woman hardened by life and armed with purpose. 2 days later, she hugged her siblings, wiped her tears quickly, and boarded a bus back to Nairobi. From there, with Achieng beside her and the agency's help, they took off for their first journey out of Kenya.